Absolutely nothing beats my morning cup of coffee in the cockpit. But how to store my supply of beans so that I have a good tasting cup? Well, hi, I'm Carolyn Sherlock, and on this episode of the Boat Galley Podcast, I'll tell you how I store coffee on the boat to keep it tasty and fresh, even in less than ideal conditions. First, though, let's talk about Hugo ware. This episode of the Boat Galley Podcast is sponsored by Hugo, and it's the only waterproof, floating phone and tablet case using dry suit zipper technology. Invest in your safety, because if you don't protect, you can't connect. Your electronics are fully functional while inside, and there's plenty of room for things like keys, cash, credit cards. I have their phone, tablet, and slim cases. Yep, 3 of them. I love them all. And when I fell in one day, it protected my phone 100%. To get the only dry bag on the market with 0 device fails, visit HugoWare.com. That's HugoWear.com. There's a link in the show notes, of course, and use coupon code SAVE20BG. That's SAVE20BG for 20% off. Hugo, just add water. So let's talk about coffee. And as I'm recording this, I'm sitting here and drinking a cup. We're going to start with an admission that there's no ideal way to store coffee on a boat. But I love a cup in the morning, particularly when I can drink it in the cockpit and watch the world around me. So I do the best I can and just deal with the fact that storage is never going to be perfect on a boat. But my surroundings certainly are perfect. Well, according to the National Coffee Association, coffee should be stored away from excessive air, moisture, heat, and light. They don't recommend refrigerating or freezing coffee, but instead storing it in a cool, dry, dark place in an airtight container. Now, it's often hard to do this on a boat, so let's take these recommendations one at a time. Okay, first, the airtight container. Most coffee comes in some sort of an airtight container, or at least it's airtight until you open it. Once opened, however, the plastic tops on coffee cans just aren't truly airtight, nor are the bags where you fold down and clip the tops. Although with these, you can use banana seals, which do provide an airtight seal. Otherwise, investing in one or lock-and-lock containers for your coffee stock is a great investment. And it's an even better idea if you buy the coffee in the plastic bags that just have a twist tie on the top, as ours did in Mexico and Central America. Okay, so moisture proof. Everyone, it seems, recommends not storing coffee in the refrigerator or freezer because of the moisture and condensate there. Basically, the idea is that every time you take the coffee out, air in the package will pick up some moisture, which will then be absorbed into the coffee when it goes back into the refrigerator. However, most experts do say that if you have a large stock of coffee that you need to keep for a while, you can put it into the freezer until you're ready to open it. But once you take it out of the freezer, don't put it back in. Okay, how about a cool place? If you're in a warm climate, don't store your coffee against the hull and above the waterline. Water is almost always cooler than air, so storing it against the hull but below the waterline is usually about the best you can do. But watch out for condensate forming on the hull and getting into your containers. Now, that's not a problem if you've used an airtight container such as the lock-and-lock ones. Storing it near the stove or in a locker near the ceiling is also a no-no, as being too hot. Under the floorboards is much better. And then there's the requirement of a dark space. Pretty much any locker is going to be dark. Clear canisters on the counter or in gear hammocks just aren't good. Okay, so the National Coffee Association also recommends not buying more coffee than you'll use in the next 1 to 2 weeks. Now, depending on where you're cruising, that might be impossible. I usually carry at least a month's supply, often 2 months, depending on how long it would be before we'd reprovision. Many small villages, like in the Sea of Cortez, had these very tiny stores that only carried instant coffee. So I would take enough beans with me so that I could avoid that. Ground coffee degrades much more quickly than whole beans, as all the cut surfaces are exposed to air and moisture. Buying whole beans and grinding them yourself just when you're ready to brew the coffee will produce a much better cup of coffee. Don't grind it even a day ahead, particularly considering the other challenges in storing coffee on a boat. So, let's put this all together. If you're not living full-time on your boat, you generally shouldn't try to store coffee aboard from one trip to another. A closed-up boat tends to get hot, and keeping an open package in the refrigerator isn't a good idea. If you use the boat seasonally, definitely take any unused coffee home at the end of the season. Buying coffee in 12-ounce to 1-pound packages can work pretty well. I put them unopened into a large lock-and-lock container in a cool and relatively inconvenient, to be honest, location. One at a time, I take them out and put the contents into smaller lock-and-lock that I keep in a drawer just above the floorboards. Yeah, storing it under the floorboards would be a little bit cooler, but on our boat, it would be harder to get to every morning. And getting whole beans and using either an electric or manual grinder will significantly improve your coffee. Living on a boat, everything is a compromise. I'll take slightly imperfect coffee storage in exchange for everything else I love about being aboard. Hey, did you find this episode to be helpful? Well, if so, please leave a review to help others find us, and also be sure to tell your friends. Until next time, thanks for listening to the Boat Galley Podcast.